Good morning and welcome to the Johnson Space Center following this morning's completion of the STS-77 mission. With us today to talk about the flight and today's entry and landing are the Shuttle Program Manager, Tommy Holloway, and Entry Flight Director, Rich Jackson. And we'll start with Tommy.
Good morning. STS-77 was a flight that demonstrated the versatility and flexibility of the shuttle system and the people who constitute the flight team, both on the ground and the air, and the execution of the flight. We launched 77 on time, landed it on time. The vehicle performed in a really marvelous way. So in all of those situations, we were extremely pleased. The vehicle was processed in spite of challenges in the hardware, and prepared and was ready to be launched on time. During the flight, we deployed and retrieved the Spartan, including positioning the orbiter to observe and photograph the inflatable antenna operation. We deployed and observed the PAMS-2 satellite, both visually and with photographs and with a laser. We accomplished 3 rendezvous and did some very precision flying. The rendezvous experience that we have is continuing to mature in our ability to accomplish rendezvous and minimum propellant profiles. The Space Hab operation went extremely smooth. We accomplished 100% of the 12 experiments that were part of those protocols, including some additional work that went on to expand some of that operation. Primary experiments in the Space Hab went exceptionally well. The crew and the ground worked well together in recovering and accomplishing in-flight maintenances, and again demonstrated the versatility of human spaceflight operations. Other technology demonstrations, such as the BETSI, that may result in a better way to supercool instruments in space, went very well. We also demonstrated hardware and capabilities for the space station program with the GPS technology demonstration. Of course, there were several other science and technology experiments on this flight, and in general, we accomplished a wide range of work, and it all went very well. The hardware from the boosters to the main engines, solid rocket motors, the orbiter, all performed exceptionally well. The flight team, both on the ground and airborne, performed in an outstanding way and did a great job. And of course, this morning the weather cooperated and we were able to land back in Florida. So in general, it doesn't get any better than this. STS-77 was a great flight and again demonstrated the breadth and depth of the shuttle's the shuttle team's capabilities to operate in space. My congratulations to all of the team members from California to Utah to Alabama to Florida and here at the Johnson Space Center that did a really great job to make it happen. Of course, Endeavour now goes out to its OMDP for a major mod in preparation for its next mission, which will be the first space station assembly flight. So we're looking forward to the next time Endeavour flies and the work that she'll do on that flight. Rich?
Okay, well, as Tommy's already alluded to, the weather did cooperate this morning and allowed us to land on time at the Kennedy Space Center. When the entry team came in this morning, we were still dealing with a couple of constraints to landing. Fortunately, those cleared themselves as we progressed towards the deorbit TIG. And the crew woke up this morning fully rested and ready to go, and the crew and the team clicked along flawlessly through the deorbit prep. It's one of the smoothest deorbit preps I've been associated with. It just went real smooth. We were essentially ahead of the timeline the entire morning. The weather phenomena that we're worried about yesterday, which were lower ceilings and the possibility of rain showers, we had that change due to some activity that occurred there yesterday. We were worried a little bit about fog this morning, but as we got closer and closer to landing time, Each of those constraints were cleared utilizing both the tools that our SMG folks have available to them in combination with the shuttle training aircraft piloted by Bob Capana, his reports coming back in terms of what we're looking for. So we were able to give the crew essentially a go for deorbit on time, and the entry was flawless. All the hardware operated extremely well, and as we've already said, we had a touchdown on time, and it was extremely beautiful sunrise at Kennedy. With that, ready for questions.
Okay, we'll be going down to Endeavour's landing site at the Kennedy Space Center for questions now.
This is Seth Borenstein from the Orlando Sentinel. Tommy, just a couple questions for you first. You said this just doesn't get any better than this. Can you compare this to this year? You've had some missions that have had some setbacks, tether cuts and problems on launch and before landing. Is this a good break? I mean, do you sort of feel like this wipes out some problems you had this year? And is this by far the best best flight you've had in how long?
Well, I think we've had several. All of the flights have been great, of course. Some took a little more effort, and we had to deal with more problems than others. This year, since the first calendar year, things have been going extremely well, and we've been fortunate both on the hardware and the weather in general has cooperated with us. So I think if you look at the record, things have been going extremely well recently. But this flight just had a little special touch on it. Everything fell in place and went extremely well, and I think that bodes well of people who do the work and preparing the hardware and also preparing the plans and the procedures and of course Rich and his colleagues who fly the flight and work with the crew in executing the flight. So I think 77 was in execution was an outstanding flight.
And about the OMDP, how much is that major mod's going to cost? When does Endeavour fly out to Palmdale? And how much more will it cost because it has to go to Palmdale because you have major mods and having to stay at Kennedy?
Well, let me answer the parts of that I can from my memory. It'll take about 60 days to prepare Endeavour to go to Palmdale, so we would expect it to be transported out there in about 60 days. Relative to the cost, that's a very complex subject, and I could not respond to that from memory. You have to be careful and make sure you're comparing apples and apples rather than apples and oranges. It does cost a bit more to do OMDPs out in California, but we also are doing more than OMDP. We're doing a major modification to the orbiter and in terms of the performance enhancements, improvements, and we're literally removing some, in round numbers, 1,500 pounds of weight out of her. So comparing a major mod to what it would cost to do it in Florida, we really don't have a complete database to do a fair comparison.
And I'm sorry, in general, how much is this going to cost? 50, 60 million? I know since it's a major mod, you're looking at a lot more money than a normal OMDP.
About $40 million.
This is Phil Chen for Rich Jackson. You did a great job of keeping us in suspense today until the last second. How close was the call? Did you have to sign any waivers or anything? How dicey was it trying to decide, wait until the last second and seeing what would happen to those clouds and everything in order to make your decision this morning?
Well, we had one brief moment that we were actually picked up a no-go observation that was several hours prior to deorbit. For the majority of the morning, the OBS were hanging in there as a go OBS. Basically what we're dealing with is, since we didn't have to give a go for the burn, there was no reason to give it early until we were closer in to the time that we needed to make a decision. We had no waivers we had to process. We were fully go OBS and forecast and held in for the landing. It was, the conditions were continually improving, I guess is the best way to put it. And we just waited until we had to make a decision. And with those improving trends, that's where we came up with the go for the deorbit burn.
And later during the entry, Eileen radioed up to the crew that they wouldn't have any clouds on the hack. From our point of view, at least, it certainly looked fairly cloudy in that area. Was that something late or just perspective from where we were viewing it from?
Probably the perspective from where you're viewing it from, if you notice the playbacks, you didn't see much in terms of the video from the ground video of the orbiter. That report actually came from the STA. Bob had been up flying the approaches, and as the cloud decks at the mid-levels were starting to thin out, he came back and said that essentially it would not be any problem at all on the hack. Just as a refresher, our ceiling requirements are 10,000 feet for end-of-mission return to Kennedy Space Center, and that's essentially on final. So we're allowed to fly the hack even in clouds up to 10,000 feet.
This is Sue Butler for the Associated Press. Rich, how about that APU? I understand it worked okay, but did you have any concerns about it? When did you turn it on? How much later than you would have turned it on had you been totally assured?
Okay, as I mentioned yesterday, we ran that APU essentially for FCS checkout, our flight control system checkout in preparation for entry yesterday. We ran it for an additional 6 minutes and verified proper cooling on both the A and the B controllers. As a result of that test yesterday, that was the first APU we started prior to the deorbit burn today, and it performed with no problems.
Thank you. And for Tommy Holloway, it may be a little too early to ask that, but when will we know whether the crystals survived the landing, since in the past they hadn't done so well? Broken, so when will we know?
I'm sorry, say again, when will we know what?
Know whether the crystals grown in space survived the impact of the landing.
Oh, I don't know that timeline specifically, but I would think it'd be a matter of a few days.
And one more question, would you just update us on the latest assembly date when Endeavour will make the first flight to the Alpha, to assemble Alpha? What is the latest assembly date?
The first flight of the first station flight, which Endeavour is currently scheduled to accomplish, is in December of '97.
Good morning, Alan Stoller, KVMR-FM. The attitude measurement system was able to lock on to the PAM's STU spacecraft, but it was having trouble at first, and I wonder if it's been figured out what was going wrong, what it was locking onto at first.
I don't think we know specifically what we did to solve that problem. There was a number of things accomplished to work on improving the capability to lock on with a laser, and I don't think we know exactly which one of those would cause the success.
Since Endeavour is going to be brought out to California for the modification, why wasn't she brought in for a landing at Edwards in the first place?
Well, primarily because there is work that needs to be done to prepare Endeavour to go into the modification facility out in California that currently can only be done in Florida, and we will safe the system, remove some OMS pods, and do work that currently can only be done in Florida, and then we'll transport Endeavour back to California.
Tommy, Todd Halverson of Florida Today. I'm wondering if you can elaborate a little bit on the modifications that will be made to 105 out in Palmdale. I think they're moving the airlock to the external position, and I'm wondering if you can elaborate on how you're going to save 1,500 pounds of weight and what performance upgrades will be made.
Well, of course, you've already mentioned one of the major changes that will be made. The internal airlock will be removed and replaced with an external airlock that has the docking base on it, docking mechanism base on it that allows us to carry the docking mechanism to dock with this with the station or the mirror as it may be. Also, we're making a large number of changes to the TPS system and going to a lighter weight TPS, particularly on the upper surfaces of the shuttle or the orbiter. We're also eliminating some vent door mechanisms to lighten the weight, and a number of other smaller things that will be incorporated while we're out at Palmdale.
And it occurs to me that you guys aren't wasting too much time, that 102 is going out to the pad tomorrow. Could you talk a little bit about that particular mission and the fact that it's only 3 weeks off?
Well, 102 is ready to go to the pad. The flow has gone extremely well. We think we'll be ready to launch her on June the 20th. Everything, the mission preparation is proceeding adequately. That flight is a 16, 17 now day mission, so we think we're all ready to go, and we have adequate time between the landing and the launch, so things are proceeding exceptionally well.
And as you mentioned, that flight is now scheduled at 16 days, 22 hours. That would be the longest shuttle mission to date. I'm wondering if you can elaborate on how that fits into the EDO buildup and preparations for the space station era.
Well, I think those are two different subjects. The shuttle, of course, has been flying around 16 days for quite some time. From a medical point of view, our medical operations has already cleared the shuttle crews to fly up to 20 days. So if we had the mission requirements and the consumables, we could fly the current shuttle to its limit of up to 20 days. However, for the long duration aspects of this, the work is going on the Mir with our astronauts on Mir, and they'll be staying on board for 90 plus days, 90 days, and perhaps on future missions even longer than 90 days. So I think those are two unrelated situations. The shuttle will fly somewhere between 16 and 20 days, depending upon the consumables available to execute the mission.
This is Stephen Young with Reuters. A question for Tommy Holloway. Will the modifications you're going to make Endeavour the pride of the fleet, your most sophisticated vehicle?
Well, for a few moments perhaps, but many of the modifications to get ready for the station era have already been made to 103, and she'll come back in a few days with those modifications already implemented. For example, the airlock has already been moved out in the bay on 103, and many of the weight modifications that I spoke of earlier have been made to 103, although there are some that remains to be done in a future OMDP down in Florida, I might add. But they are fairly small items for 103. And eventually, all of the what we all the high performance vehicles, that's 103, 104, and 105, will have basically the same fleet set of modifications made to it to enhance their performance and allow them to support the maximum performance flights to the International Space Station. 102, however, is currently not scheduled to have all of those mods made to her. She'll remain the vehicle with the less performance in the fleet.
And are there specific shuttles you need to use for specific space station assembly tasks? For example, if Endeavour was not ready for the December flight, is there any way you could use another shuttle for that particular mission? And will Columbia not be used for any space station assembly missions?
Currently, Columbia is not planned to be used in any of the station assembly missions. Currently, Columbia is not planned to be outfitted for an external airlock and a docking capability. All of the other three vehicles will be outfitted to be able to dock with the station, and the performance modifications will be made to them. 103 will be used to fly to Mir on the Mir 7 and 7 and 8 in 1998 with a docking system and an external airlock that's in the position to also support the space station. Many of the performance mods will have already been made to her at that time, so she's in a position to support station as station comes online basically at the current time. 105, of course, will come back from OMDP next summer, and will be in a position to support station. So at the time of the first station launch, we'll have 2 vehicles that are fully modified and ready to support station, and we'll be in the process of modifying the third vehicle, 104, who will have, when she finishes her the 6th flight to the Mir station, will go to OMDP and will incur a major modification to get her ready for station.
Pete Calteri with the West Kentucky News for Tommy. Tom, that 1,500 pounds, is that a net weight savings, or are you going to take 1,500 pounds off and then add X to it?
That's a net. And I should add, that's just orbiter weight reductions. Overall, we're improving the performance of the shuttle launch system, including the external tank and super lightweight tank, some guidance and flight control changes during the boost phase of the vehicle, and several other modifications, and we expect to gain 13,000 plus pounds of performance capability.
Okay, and on the extended missions for, I guess, Columbia, is there anyone that's requesting a 20-day mission? Is there anything planned? Is there a need for a 20-day mission?
Well, I think requirements-wise, our customers would, in general, like to fly as long as we can, and typically the missions are constrained by how much consumables that we have, and the trade between how much power you want to provide and how much oxygen you would reserve to support longer duration flights. So I think there's a trade-off between requirements and how long you want to fly, and we'll see how that unfolds with time.
Todd Halverson of Florida Today for Tommy Holloway again. Did I hear you correctly that either 103 or 104's next modification or OMDP will be done here in Florida?
No. 105, of course. 103 is coming back from Palmdale shortly. 105 is going to Palmdale as soon as we get it ready. And a major mod will be done in Palmdale. As far as 104 is concerned, it is a major modification to implement the performance enhancements modifications. We will deal with the subject of where to do the major modifications in 104 in the August timeframe from a program point of view. Our current baseline for our normal OMDPs, our regular OMDPs, that would be one where we're not doing these major modifications, is currently to Florida.
So am I correct in assuming then that after the major mods are done to 103, 105, and 104 for the space station eras, that regular OMDPs that don't require major mods would be done on a routine basis at the Kennedy Space Center?
That's our current baseline, and assuming that we're still flying at 7 or 8 flights a year, that's our current plan.
And at what time in the future would that begin taking place? And just a quick follow to that, what happens to Palmdale in that case?
Well, assuming that we are able to implement that plan, the flight rate stays at 7 or 8. I think from a standpoint of OMDPs, Palmdale would be mothball.
Tommy, this is Seth Borenstein at the Orlando Sentinel again. Just to follow up on that, to reiterate Todd's question, when do you see, I mean, after 105 goes through its major mods, then I guess next up is 102 again? And
104.
Well, 104, I'm sorry. Oh yeah, 104 goes. Next up is 102 again, and that would be here in Florida. When do you see this happening? How much money do you think you'll save by coming here and mothballing Palmdale?
Well, for regular OMDPs, of course, I think you have the scenario correctly. The first would be 102, and then we'd be back to 103, and then 105 and 104. They always come in sequence, of course. And as I said earlier, those are currently the baseline is we're planning to accomplish those in Florida. There's a lot of variables associated with whether that's the right plan or not, one of which is the flight rate. There's a flight rate at which we'd no longer be able to do OMDPs in Florida, and around 9 or 10 a year. Also the size of the job that has to be done in terms of its potential to interfere with our ability to fly our flights on time. You know, our overall objectives in the program, as you remember, is to fly safely and fly the manifest and reduce cost. And the second one of those, that flying the manifest, infers that we're able to deal with schedules and upsets in schedules and still fly the number of flights per year that we would like to fly. So that's a complex subject in terms of the future, and might change as a function of those considerations changing. Nevertheless, our current plan is to do the OMDPs in Florida. Now, I cannot quote from memory how much money we think we'll save by doing OMDPs down in Florida, but it is in the order of $10 to $15 million a OMDP.
And just when will this start with 102's first major mod? And when did you change the policy to make it now the regular OMDPs in Florida?
That's our plans today, and the first one would be the next OMDP for 102. And of course, we have not made the decision on 104, so potentially we could do 104 in Florida, although today it's a major mod.
Okay, that wraps up the questions from the Kennedy Space Center. Just a few programming notes. The STS-77 astronauts have emerged from the crew transport vehicle. They've done their walk around of Endeavour. They're all in good shape. We'll be going back to the Kennedy Space Center to the shuttle landing facility in a moment and show you a replay of the walk around. At 11 a.m. Central Time this morning, back to NASA headquarters for the regular video file for today. At about noon Central Time, the astronauts' post-landing news conference at the Kennedy Space Center. Stay tuned to NASA TV for any updates to that time. And later this afternoon, about 4:30 Central Time, the astronauts will be back at Ellington Field here in Houston. Thanks very much.